Okay, good. We're really excited to have you all here today. This is actually the third in our learning event series. The first one was about Rabbi White. The second one was about Rabbi Lou. And this third one is about our beautiful building. And it feels so wonderful to have this event as part of our centennial celebration, because this building is so iconic. It is literally our icon. It is literally our logo. It is our calling card almost. When I tell people I belong to Beth Sholom and they say, "Where's that?" I say, you know, it's the one with the big bowl. And oh, I pass that all the time. It is how we are known. And so it feels important and right to spend some time learning about how it came to be. And when we were here on Thursday doing a little rehearsal, and Mark said, "You should say something about the space." And he said, "What am I supposed to say about the space?" And he said, "Well, how do you feel in it?" And we were standing right here, and I looked around and I realized with all the wood and the stained glass and just that I feel warm and cozy and intimate, and that's a really big part of this space. And I thought about how in oh my God, I'm losing my words. The sanctuary, thank you. How I feel so connected and open. And Mark said, that's what drove this project, how we wanted you to feel in these spaces. And that really kind of grounded me for this event, and made me realize how important it is that we spend some time thinking about that and really feeling it. So
we welcome you.
We welcome you. Our next events after this one is on April 28th, and we'll be talking about the music history of Beth Sholom. And then, of course, our big event is on May 14th, the Gala Centennial, which starts with the Shabbat in the morning, and it ends with the celebration at night, and we hope all of you will join us. And now, without further ado, we introduce Rabbi Russell, who will then introduce us.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see everyone here. I have the distinct honor of introducing Mark Gunther, and I'm not sure that Mark Gunther really needs an introduction in this group of people, and I don't know who's online, but hello, thank you for joining us. I think what I'll say about Mark is that you and I are just sort of getting to know each other over the past 6 months or a year, and what I've noticed about you is that you are focused on vision and goals and really getting things done. And when you're focused on vision and goals and getting things done, it brings out a certain passion for the things that you're doing. And we're already seeing things getting done, and now you get to tell us what you did all these years ago. And so I know that we're in for a treat. I know that I'm really looking forward to this presentation because I have not actually learned about this project and about how it came to be. And following what Ruth said, you know, I've been in all of these spaces in different capacities: rabbi, cantor, teacher, student, right? I've sort of been sitting in different seats, and I think every seat is different, right? You have, when you're leading from the bima, you have to decide, am I standing this way? Am I standing this way? Are the people over here? Are they over here? It really takes some getting used to when you're in these different spaces. And so I'm kind of looking forward just to learning about how that all came to be and why it was designed that way. And we are in very good hands, I know, to hear from you, Mark, this afternoon. And so with we shouldn't wait any longer. Take it away.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Hello, you too. And so when Ann and I moved to San Francisco, when we moved to this neighborhood in 1985, we knew we wanted to join a shul, and one day, was it a Shabbat perhaps, or one of the high holy days, we went shul shopping in the neighborhood. We went to Magen David, and we went to Emmanuel, and we went to here. And when we came into Beth Sholom, there was praying going on the stage, and there were kids running around in the aisle. And there were people talking to each other over here, and a different group of people talking to each other over here. And it was just so darn Hamish that we just said, this is the place that we want to be. And this feeling, this feeling of community and passion and care and ownership and presence, if we didn't have that, we wouldn't be standing here today. It really took a huge, massive, deeply engaged effort by this community to make this thing happen. And if there is any point to this story, it's that one. So, like I said, though, we came here and we had young children and they got involved in the religious school and we came to high holiday services. And I really didn't really become aware of the synagogue as an organization until the early 90s, when we were going through a particular brand of tsuris at that time. And part of that was informed by the nature of our building. We had built the building, it had been there now for 50-ish years, 60 years, and it was deteriorating. There were efforts to try and do something about it, and nothing really, it really didn't happen. And so this is not just the story of imagining and building a building, but it's the story of building a community that can make this building happen the way it did. So next slide, please, Jake. So in the beginning, right, doesn't every good Jewish story start this way? We had these three buildings, the sanctuary that was built in 1937, the Temple House was built in 1951 and then remodeled into the Friedman Center at some point later. And this house right here at 323 14th, which we bought in 1998 to be the home of Makor Or. So nothing really talked to anything. We had, each of the building's floor levels was at a different level. And to get to the school, you had to walk down this sort of covered dark hallway to get into the school. And there were 23 doors to the outside. And the buildings were deteriorating. The sanctuary, the south wall here was bowing out. And there was some questions about seismic safety because of the clear span inside relative to current. So, but the real thing is that nobody was willing to donate to remodeling the place, but it looked like they were willing to donate to building a new one. Next slide, please. And this is what our sanctuary looked like. Dark, ranked rows, a bima, a choir loft way above, and very different from what you are used to, or what you used to know. Next slide, please. So this is the history of the site that I just related to you, and this is where we were. So there was an attempt in 1993 to do some work. I think Bob Jochnowitz produced a plan. Some of you remember this? Yeah, Anna's remembering this. Todd is remembering this. But that couldn't really go anyway. So we came to 1998. Next slide, please. So we came to 1998 and we needed to, and we did a strategic plan for the congregation. And one of the things that was asked, of course, was what were people's favorite parts of the building? And maybe some of you guys remember this. We had a drawing of the building and you put red dots on the places that you liked. And you put black dots on the places you didn't like. And there was a massive collection of black dots. The most red dots were in 14th Street. So that had to be done. In the meantime, we were facing a lot of these issues. The seismic safety I mentioned, structural integrity of the building. Security was becoming more of an, it's always an issue for Jewish organizations, but it was becoming more and more of an issue. The unattractive social hall, we hadn't had a center there for years, I think, because it was. Well, okay.
What was that?
We had a rare, it was rare that we held something there. So. And the general usefulness and utility of the building wasn't good because of all of the moving around, and there was no congregational supports for repairing the additional structure. So we did this initial attempt, we did the strategic planning exercise, and then we did decision to proceed. Now that looks like a really quiet and simple, right? When you look at it on that thing, it's like 3 words, but incorporated in that decision to proceed was the building of the structure, the board had to get engaged with it. We had to build a fundraising infrastructure. We had to build a management infrastructure for the operations. We had to develop and select an architect, and Anne served on that committee, right? Did you serve on the selection committee? Yeah. Anne served on the architect selection committee. Did you?
I
Sam?
think so.
You did, yeah. It's hard, Sandy, it's hard to remember all the committees that we served on here. So, so all of these bits and pieces had to be in place, and we did an RFP for an architect. 15 firms submitted their qualifications, and through this process, we ended up selecting Stanley Seidowitz and Associates, whose specialty was, concrete and metal. And so we knew what we were going to be getting when we made that design decision. And then there was a long process of really engaging the congregation around it. We did the initial design of the building, said we wanted to build 36,000 feet and have 20 parking spaces on the ground floor. And of course, we built 24,000 square feet and replaced actually the same amount of square footage, but this is much more usable because of the integrated design. And so we had neighborhood meetings with all of our congregants and we had at least 20 or 30 of them in people's houses all around the city, presenting the design. The architect would come, Rabbi Lou would come, and we had our committee that did each of these things. And so gradually this happened, and then we had to build the fundraising infrastructure as well. So we hired a fundraising consultant, and we hired Beth Jones at that time to work. And Beth ended up staying here for 20 plus years. So that was good. And so it really took 5 years to get to the point where we could go, and it was a race between raising the money and the accelerating costs of building. So the building costs were going up like 10% a year, and so every time the cost went up, we would have to raise more money, and it got to the point where we had to move at the time that we did, or it was going to be a big issue. Unfortunately, Sandy raised that last $1 million at the last minute, and we were able to break ground in 2006. Sandy Goldstein. That's right. There were a few volunteers who really distinguished themselves, and Sandy Goldstein, as our president, took charge of the fundraising, took charge of the community engagement, and just put tireless hours into doing this. Later on in the construction process, Alan Schwartz got involved for the last couple of years and put in a huge amount of work on the low voltage stuff and on writing the house manual, which Alan still uses daily, I imagine.
Yeah.
So this whole process of building and design and engaging, it was all going along sort of next to each other. We finally made the decision to proceed. Then we went ahead with the entitlements process, and to do entitlements in San Francisco, getting the permits for the construction. We had a lawyer, we had 3 different kinds of engineers. We had a neighborhood organizer, we had a permit expediter, we had, that's even before we had to get to the project to do that. This is before the project. So, and we went through this, and we finally presented to the planning commission, and we were approved by a vote of 4-2. And the 2 said, no, we don't like your building. We like your building fine. We just don't want it to be there. Well, it turns out that here was a part of the original design of this neighborhood of San Francisco. This property and the property across the way that has a Christian Science church were designed to be sort of welcoming portals as you came off of the Golden Gate Bridge into the city. You had these 2 religious institutions facing each other. So, but it didn't carry any weight with those 2 objecting people. So next slide, please. So we going to go to the, so when we were about halfway, oh, this is the construction one, right? So, you know, every good picture, every good presentation about a building needs one of these. So go ahead and run this. These are all from the corner of 14th and Clement. Every few weeks, a few more weeks, it gradually goes up and up and up. The construction of the bowl, it's built like a bridge, that bowl. There's concrete there's rebar that straps around the top, so the weight of the bowl itself helps pull it together. Yeah, and there we go. Magic. Mhm. So let's go back to the other one. When we went, yeah. No, go back to the previous one, the scheduled one, right? This one here. So this 2-year period here was for me a constant cascade of phone calls and emails and meetings and contractors this and contractors that. And when we get to the budget, I'll get into a little more detail about that. But it was a hugely complex project to do, and my role was to be the owner. Right? We had a project manager who worked for us, who coordinated all of the work and made sure things got, who was our advocate. And my job was to make decisions like, you know, was to bring to Sandy Goldstein really, decisions like, do we put a wood floor in here or do we leave it concrete? Do we put a wood floor upstairs? There are so many little things that we had to do during this process. But anyway, one of the big issues, let's go to the next slide now. So, no, the next, yeah, there we go. So we were out of the building for 2 years. We were by me bar, right? Wandering in with this. We had our services in churches. We used St. Peter's up here for quite a while. We had the high holidays in the the 19th and Slope.
Masonic Water.
Yeah. And there was a real challenge in, we had to do the construction, we had to do the fundraising and financing, which was its own project, and we had to keep the congregation engaged and vital. And I have to say that Rabbi Hyman played a huge role in keeping us together. He was relentlessly positive, relentlessly engaged, and despite the fact that we were scattered in so many ways, we still had that spirit of community that kept us going. And we still were tied here because the preschool remained in session, and we did our minyan in the Shapiro room, which I realize nobody knows what that is, except for me, which is the large room. You do, right? People have been here forever. It's the large room on the ground floor behind the schoolyard in the school building. And so minyan was there, and sometimes Kabbalat Shabbat too, I think.
Yeah.
So we had the things that were grounding us here. And let's go to the next slideshow now. So don't start quite yet. So when we had a topping off ceremony, it turns out, both Sandy and I had completely forgotten that we did this, but Catherine Hollander sent these photographs, and it all came back. And then I found some other ones, and everybody came to the site for the first time. We were together as a community after a year, and we did some tours of the site. Let's get this going now. Rabbi Hyman spoke, I spoke, Stanley spoke, Harvey Lubar, Sandy Goldstein, and we took people on tours. So just the group after group after group came upstairs, and we walked them around the places we could see. Everybody got to wear a hard hat. It was a fine old time. And yep. And this is where I took the pictures here, and you can see where it is on the plaza, but before the war.
Right.
They're one of our favorite recorders, a couple of our favorite, and stop here. So here is Rabbi Hyman and Aaron Hyman and Rabbi Lou and Cheryl and Theo. And, you know, I was reflecting so much the loss of Aaron and of course of Rabbi Lou was, you know, it was really hard for us, but this was a time where we were all together. And now this last slide is really, you know, this building is really comes from each of these guys, the vision of the building from Rabbi Lou and the vision of the community and how we could inhabit this place from Rabbi Hyman. So.
Could you tell us who to those of us who don't know any of the people that came before? Which one is Rabbi?
Okay, this is Rabbi Lou on the left. He was our rabbi from roughly 92 or 3, yeah, roughly.
Yeah, even 91.
Yeah, from 91 to 2006. And then we had an interim, and then Rabbi Hyman came in 2007, was here for 4 years until he had to.
He was here for 7 years.
7 years.
13 or 14.
Yeah,
Rabbi Lou was here for 14.
14.
Rabbi Hyman was here for
For
7
7,
years.
yeah,
Then the
yeah,
family, they had to respond to their results. And so. Okay. If I could, you know, if I had a dime for every time I've been asked that question, I could have paid off the debt on the building loan because nobody really understood it. And when you initially saw it, except for the ones who did get it, and it turns out that it's built, you know, in exactly the way we wanted to. Now there is a video that's available on our website that still answers these questions pretty well, so I'm going to run that video now.
The design of the sanctuary began with the idea of being in the round. And that was a very important part of what the late Rabbi Ellen Lou wanted to be the kind of feeling of this place.
Rabbi Lou was after 3 different things. The first is that he really wanted to have participation. The second is he really wanted to do away with the stage. He did not want to have this idea of the somehow prayer being delivered to you from somebody on high. In fact, the idea was to emphasize the presence of the congregation much more than to emphasize the presence of the leadership. And the third inspiration was really doing away with the mechitza.
The site itself was very constraining, and to actually do a seating arrangement in the round wasn't really possible. So after thinking about it a lot, I realized that it was possible to create this feeling of the round by doing it in section as a sort of vertical plane, and to create the same kind of feeling of centered intimacy and the sort of concept of in the round in a different form. The other thing that was very important for us was the creation of a new contemporary type of sanctuary that eliminated the sort of separation that the balcony as a historic kind of division between men and women represented. And so that also folded into this idea of a kind of wall of faces that would be this creation of in the round without that sort of separation. So the whole egalitarian nature of Beth Sholom and finding a form that was unique and fitted that was essential.
When you enter the space, you come in from the street, you're on the ground floor. You have the secular functions of the synagogue, the offices, the kitchen are on the ground floor. You come up the stairs and you move into the holy space by coming up the stairs and turning and then walking in again towards the east. When you walk into the sanctuary are there facing the east. Have you gone through this transition from the secular to the holy?
In this particular sanctuary, the connections are all made with light. So all of the elements of shelter, the roof and the walls, are pulled apart and then joined by light. And then in the pulling apart, there are a series of beams which actually cast shadows, which are a menorah. And so as you sit in the space and through the service, the space is animated by this shadow menorah. So the decoration is actually a decoration of light. The chapel is, in a way, the kind of foundation of the community. It's where the older people come every day to pray. It's, in a sense, the place where the continuity of the congregation is sort of cemented. So the idea was to take this part of the original building and to reinvigorate it in a new life in the Beit Midrash or chapel. And the windows themselves were beautiful, but they had a sort of fragmented presence in the old building because they were quite spread apart. And what I wanted to do was to actually intensify them. So we took them apart and put them all together, and they became, in a way, a lot more powerful as the walls of this Beit Midrash than they had been in the original building.
The key idea in the design of the space is that it's not the space that generates holiness. It's the inhabitants of the space who generate holiness. The building is not the thing, it's the congregation that's the thing. And when you're sitting in the congregation looking at everybody, you are generating that space for open prayer and open heartedness. And that's what the spiritual core of Beth Sholom has always been. And that's what was reflected by the choice of this design for the building.
What's the question? What's the side of this? Obviously, the guy who came from South Africa.
Yes.
I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah. He is.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, he is.
Such an accent.
A landsman.
He's a lunchman.
That's right.
And we could recognize it anyway. And, the line, see it. Right.
So that's why we built it. And this is what it cost, $17 million. So the construction contract, I'll just sort of walk through the lines here. The construction contract is everything that we paid the general contractor, foundation to roof. Owner purchases, these are things that some of the things are decorative, like the floor or the drapes. Some of the things were excluded from the construction contract, like the AV, spent $185,000 on that. The low voltage, the kitchen equipment, $300,000 there. So, you know, 300 here, 300 there. It all adds up.
The arc.
Well, that's actually in this other cost category. Then design and consulting is what we paid the architects and the engineers, and these other costs included the arc and some of the other decorative things and other items like street space permits, $225,000 for street space permits for all of those months that we were, operating right out here on 14th Avenue. So, and then just interest during the project was that 200, so $17,188,000. We had hoped it was going to be 14 million, so we would have about 15% over budget, which doesn't seem a lot, 15%, but of course, it all depends on the size of the denominator. And so we were 3 million over budget. We raised 14 million. When we ended the project, we had 3 million in receivables and 6 million in the construction loan, and it took another 10 years to pay off the construction loan. And here we are. So did we get what we paid for? Yes, we got what we paid for. And how do I know that? Because at the beginning of the process, we did an architectural program which is a document where we go through each of the congregational needs, each of the needs of the client, in this case, us. We need a chapel, we need bathrooms, we need this offices, we need the sanctuary. And we came up with this document, and as I said previously, initially it was more than we were able to afford, but we cut a couple of things out, an extra meeting room here and a dedicated lounge and things that we didn't have, and we were able to bring down the cost to something rational and bring down the program to something that was approved by everybody. And when I did my analysis of the program after we were done, we had met almost everything. And I think, in my experience anyway, the building works incredibly well. It does the things that we wanted it to. It has these unique features. Each of these rooms have a different identity, and you'll see that when we walk through in a little while. Each of the fact that we got these plazas that also are the circulation, so we haven't lost any square footage in hallways, right? It's all usable space, and all of this stuff happens outside. And the design supports our function, and some things we chose to spend on, like the drapes and the wood floor upstairs, for example, and the wood floor in here. I've said that 4 times already. So there are a few other things too, where we made those kind of decisions, and I'm not, and they all, I don't think we really regret any part of it. So, and one more slide here. Where has that left us? We took a big chance when we did this. If we had stayed in the old building, we probably would have, who knows if we would be here today. And yet, we gambled everything that we had. It took every bit of passion and engagement and energy. Some of us worked really hard, and some people didn't work as hard, but everybody gave. I mean, because and you can look at the, we can look at the donor wall out there if you want to chapter and verse on it, but the fact that people loved us enough, the idea of what this congregation was and is, that's what enabled us to do this. It didn't happen, because one person just wrote a check. That one person did write a pretty big check, but he wasn't the only one. And so, that's really good. And we're still, so we definitely, is this forced us to grow as an organization? I think I've referred to that a couple of different times. We've had to, change a lot, and we're still in that process. I would say we're maybe 85% of the way down that road, but it's been a long process. We built a uniquely Jewish building, simple, unadorned, direct, that achieved the design aims, and we still have the preschool too. And the campus is an asset, it's a resource, it's a home, and it's here for all of us. So thank you. That's the end of this. So that's the end of my spiel. We'll take some questions. Now. Then we'll do the tour, and those of you online, and I think we're going to put the online people up on the screen here, so we can see who has joined us. And so we'll do some questions now, then we'll do the tour, then we'll do some questions after the tour, and we'll have some snacks upstairs too. So sorry, you guys online. We did not package snacks. You can't swing by here and pick that up. So hello, everybody. Oh, look who's here. How fun. Okay. So.
Were there any questions in the chat?
Okay, Sandy Goldstein. Sandy Goldstein, turn on your video. We really need, there he is. Sandy was my partner and my monitor in this process, and we spent really a lot of time together, and it was really, all of it
Does he want to
was.
say something?
Huh?
Does he want to
Yeah.
say something?
Sandy, do you want to say anything?
Hold on.
Unmute. Unmute. Yeah.
There I go. thank you for mentioning me and all the credit you gave me. And I hadn't prepared anything, but I certainly want to say that the community owes Mark a debt of gratitude, something we can't repay. If it weren't for Mark's, I had a whole lot of adjectives prepared, but my brain's not working well. But his dedication, his perseverance, his focus, as was said before, I can't imagine anything worse than sitting through meeting after meeting with the contractor and the architect as this process was going on. And I recall, we're talking about shortages now, but China was in the middle of a huge building boom. And it seemed that every single day, the prices were going up, as Mark was talking about. There was initially, Mark, I'm sorry I had to step away, but there was supposed to be a water feature. I don't know if you had mentioned that.
I did not mention the water feature, but I'll show you where it was supposed to be when we take the tour. And for those of you online, under the steps.
I remember that being cut out. I remember that part of the idea behind this was also, could we show that we as a community could actually step up and pull something like this off as a reflection of really who we were. And we understood that there was a risk in doing this. We understood that people were starting to question the wisdom of putting money into buildings and into capital campaigns. But we decided to take that risk. And also we realized that generationally, it would only be possible to build this building at the time when we went on, that this was not something that we could put off for a long period of time. Pardon me, due to the nature of how wealth was being transferred from generation to generation and the kind of occupations that subsequent generations were taking on, et cetera. But in any case, it's something that we succeeded at. And one last thing I will say is that when we looked at this horrifying deficit, Mark was the one who said, look, have faith, we're going to do this, we'll just raise the money later on. And you were right about that. I was very skeptical, but it is something that we wanted to do as a gift to future generations. I think part of it is because we had experienced what we did at Beth Sholom. We wanted to put the synagogue, at least in terms of infrastructure, into a place where this could continue and where future generations would have the same possibilities that we had enjoyed. So, Yash Koach, Mark, thank you for what you did. Without you, we might have raised the money, et cetera, but I can't imagine how the building would have been built. So I just want to express my gratitude to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I wasn't going to say this, but I will say at this point, the reason I was able to do it is because when our daughter died suddenly in 1997, Beth Sholom was here for us then and the next week and the next month and 5 years later and 20 years later. And so we felt so supported and loved and, cherished here that it was easy to put the time in because we've gotten so much more back. So questions, people online, put your questions in the chat and Jake will read them to me. And anybody here have one to start off?
Can we see who's on page 2? Oh.
I guess my presentation was just so complete that I've just bowled everybody over with all of the information. So
just have a comment from Michael Rappaport saying, it is obvious that without Mark and Sandy's and others' leadership at the time, we would not be here today. So.
Your own?
It's my understanding, I thought that we weren't supposed to have representative art in synagogues, you know, human faces and things. So how does that, am I wrong?
Well, maybe this is abstract art.
Okay.
So I don't know. I mean, I think the reason these are here is because they were in the old building and we wanted to preserve, something. So,
And then
so
my
yeah.
other question was to ask you about the stairs. The
Stairs.
stairs became an issue, right? Stairs in
Oh, with the
sanctuary.
inside, yeah, in the original design construction of the sanctuary, the angle of the seat risers were such that the stairs were of different heights. And even though that was approved in code under the stadium exception, you'll note if you go to a stadium, you'll have that same experience. It was unsafe, and so we were able to, so we actually went back and reconstructed it thanks to the largesse of the architect's insurance company. And completely reconstructed the seating, so we now have stairs that are normal height. So yeah, that's what happened, but it didn't cost us anything other than a little more time.
I'll ask the question. So I haven't been here so long, but I have noticed that in the pandemic, one of the sort of blessings, I guess, is that we've learned how to use the outdoor spaces really well. This sort of flow inside, outside from Koret and also into the sanctuary. And even down here, we've set up with high boys and things like that to make it. And I wonder if that was in the plans and what the vision was for the outdoor space this year.
I think the vision has been realized.
Yeah.
That is one of the things that we never got together, was figuring out how to do that. And I think COVID has partly forced the issue, and Alan's second career as a decorator.
Gardener. Yeah.
And so, you know, and this is really what it takes in a volunteer organization. It takes somebody to really own that thing. And Alan has owned giving us the use of these spaces. And now we have them forever because of this gift that he made, this gift of organization that he made. So.
And where did Rabbi Lou and Stanley Sadowitz want the sukkah?
On the plaza.
Yeah, but which part of the plaza?
You know, I think that's up to the current rabbi.
Okay.
But we've been, I will say, if you have seen all of the sukkahs that we've discarded over the years. Any more questions? Questions online, questions in here? All right then, well, online people, thank you. We're going to say goodbye to you. But before we do, I'm going to bring Sandy and Ruth back up because I think they want to invite you to buy 2 tickets each at the maximum possible value for the centennial.
Or to sponsor it. We have sponsorships available. But we look forward to seeing you all in on May 14th and also on April 28th, where we have a very interesting program with representation from previous cantors. That should be really interesting. And we're really pleased that you joined us today. Thank you. And thank you to Mark. Thank you to Jake, flawless behind the scenes. And thanks to all of you.
Okay, so if you're sticking around for the tour, in 5 minutes, we'll meet outside across the street on 14th Avenue. Okay?
Okay.